Most people install security cameras to feel safe, to believe that if something happens, at least it will be recorded. But no one talks about what happens when the camera records something that was never meant to be seen. This footage was reviewed dozens of times by professionals, by police, by people who deal with disturbing images for a living, and all of them said the same thing. Nothing in the video explains why it happened or how it was even possible, because whatever appears on that camera doesn't behave like a person, and it doesn't behave like an animal either. It simply waits. What happened next wasn't loud. There were no screams, no sudden movement, no clear moment where everything broke. It was subtle. Small details started to feel wrong. Doors that were always closed appeared slightly open. Lights that were never on stayed glowing late into the night. The air felt heavier, like the place itself was paying attention. People began to notice patterns, but no one spoke about them openly. When they did, conversations ended quickly. A sentence left unfinished, a look exchanged. Silence. The unsettling part wasn't fear, it was familiarity, as if whatever was happening had been there all along, waiting to be noticed. And once someone noticed it, they couldn't unsee it. What happened next wasn't dramatic. There was no scream, no sudden movement, just a feeling, that quiet sense that something had shifted. People often say you can feel when you're not alone, but that's not exactly true. It's more subtle than that. It's the moment your body reacts before your mind does. Your breathing changes, your steps slow down, and for no clear reason you stop. Nothing in front of you looks different. The street is the same. The lights haven't moved, but somewhere behind you, something feels closer than it should, and that's when most people make the same mistake. They turn around. At first, he told himself it was just exhaustion. Long days have a way of distorting reality, especially when routine takes over and the mind goes on autopilot. But something didn't add up. Every night, the details changed. Never enough to be obvious, but enough to feel wrong. A streetlight that flickered only when he passed beneath it. A shadow that seemed slightly closer than it had been the night before. He started paying attention to the silence. Not the normal quiet of empty streets, but a silence that felt intentional, almost deliberate, as if the city itself was holding its breath when he walked through it. That was the moment he realized this wasn't about imagination anymore. Whatever was happening was responding to him. The first time he checked the footage, he almost closed it immediately. Nothing stood out at first glance. No figures, no movement, just the same empty frames he'd seen before. But something felt wrong. He rewound the video, then slowed it down. That's when he noticed the timing didn't make sense. The camera had activated without recording any visible motion. No shadow crossed the frame, no light changed, nothing entered or left the scene. Yet the system logged presence. Seconds passed, then minutes. Whatever triggered the camera was there long enough to be recorded, but never long enough to be seen. After that night, he stopped trusting what he could see. He started relying on routine instead. Same path, same time, same pace. Routine creates safety. At least that's what people believe. But something began to interrupt it. The streets felt longer than usual. The distance between streetlights seemed stretched, as if the night itself was expanding around him. He noticed how sound behaved differently. Footsteps didn't echo the way they should. Cars passed without leaving any sense of direction behind. Even his own movements felt delayed, like the world was reacting a second too late. That was when a thought settled in. Quiet, but clear. Whatever this was, it wasn't watching from a distance anymore. It was learning. By then, the nights had started blending together. What used to feel like isolated moments now felt connected, as if each night was part of the same sequence. He noticed how the spaces around him felt smaller indoors. Hallways seemed longer than they should be. Corners felt closer, walls felt closer. Even familiar places lost their sense of comfort. Rooms he'd been in 100 times now felt like they were being observed from inside. Not watched in the usual way, not from a distance. It felt more personal than that, as if whatever was there didn't need to follow him anymore. It already knew where he would be, and that realization stayed with him longer than the fear itself. Sleep stopped bringing rest. Even when he closed his eyes, his mind stayed alert, listening for patterns that never fully repeated. He started waking up before sounds happened, before doors closed, before footsteps reached the end of the hallway. Time felt unstable. Minutes stretched longer than they should, while entire hours disappeared without explanation. He checked clocks more often than necessary, not because he didn't trust them, but because he didn't trust the space between 1 second and the next. That was when it became clear this wasn't about watching anymore. Whatever had been following him had found a way inside the quiet moments. The moments where no one else was supposed to be there. By then, the feeling had stopped being subtle. It followed him into moments that were supposed to feel normal. Standing in line, waiting at a crosswalk, sitting alone in silence. He noticed how people around him reacted, not to him, but to the space near him. Small hesitations, a step taken slightly wider, eyes that lingered for half a second too long. No one said anything. No one pointed. But their bodies seemed to know something he didn't. That was the most unsettling part. Whatever had been following him no longer felt invisible. It felt acknowledged. The first real break happened without warning. Not a sound, not a shape, just an interruption. A moment where everything felt slightly out of place, like a sentence that ended too early. He stopped walking, not because he was afraid, but because his body refused to continue. The air felt heavier in front of him, thicker somehow, as if space itself had weight. He tried to focus on something normal, his breathing, the ground beneath his feet, the sound of distant movement. But nothing responded the way it should. That was when he understood something important. This wasn't about being followed anymore, it was about being allowed to move. He didn't run, there was no sudden panic, no dramatic moment of escape. Just a quiet understanding that some things don't announce themselves when they arrive. They settle in. Days passed and nothing visible changed. The streets stayed the same, the rooms stayed familiar. People moved on with their lives, but something subtle began to shape his behavior. He noticed how he adjusted his movements without thinking, how he slowed down before corners, how he waited an extra second before stepping forward. Not because he was afraid, but because his body remembered what his mind still tried to ignore. Somewhere along the way, he learned that moving too freely was no longer a given. And that lesson didn't fade, it stayed, not watched, not chased, just aware that something unseen now shared the space around him. Sayings about fear always sounded dramatic to him. But this wasn't fear. It was awareness. The kind that doesn't shout, doesn't rush, doesn't disappear. It simply stays quiet, watching from the edges, waiting to see how much space you're willing to give away.